Hi everyone and good evening. You're watching The Money Show on ET Now. I'm Ubina Kapasi. This is the show where we tell you all that's lined up for you on your money related matters, how to make you smarter with your investments as well. Well, let's tell you what we have lined up on today's episode of the show. First up, as we are in the midst of a health crisis, we are seeing changes in the composition of our family. These are tough times which do leave the remainder members of the family having to go through a very difficult transition, one that they may have never gone through before, especially if the person who has passed away is an earning member of the family. So how should you essentially navigate this tricky path? We'll be discussing this with Amit Kukreja. He's the founder of Amit Kukreja Advisory. And did you know that if you have to treat yourself for COVID at home, you can make a claim with your insurance policy for the expenses incurred for those at-home treatments as well? Well, we'll have Amit Chabra of Health Business Head of PolicyBazaar.com to talk about that. Well, let's, without any further ado, welcome on the show our first guest, Amit Kukreja. Hi, Amit. Good evening, and thank you so much for joining us today on the show. Hope you and your family are doing safe and well amidst this pandemic. So, Amit, it's obviously any which way is a very difficult time, more so, much more so for those individuals, unfortunately, who have seen, the death, there's been a change in the family composition. How should the heirs of the individual who has passed away cope financially with this transition in life?
So it's definitely very tough on the family, right? And we need to assess the overall impact of the death in the family. Obviously, there's a lot of emotional thing which will come in picture. And once the emotions have settled down, then only our practical brain will pick up the threads and take it forward. For a family who has lost somebody very close, the first thing we have to make sure that all the paperwork that he used to follow and maintain is in our control. The important mobile phone number that he used to or she used to access in our control, and the email accounts are in our control. It's also important for us to understand, once the emotions have settled down, are there any liquidity issues in the family that needs to be immediately dealt with? So we have to be very careful. What is the money that we need to run the house? What was the source of that money? Can we run the house even if that source of money is kind of deferred or being investigated? Or are we going to run into a crisis? So assess your liquidity situation, assess the insurance claim situation of the person who we have lost, assess the asset ownership situation of the person we have lost. Also try to understand, were there any liability on that individual who passed away? And if yes, then what is the total liability, the total outstanding loan or any other commitment that he or she was supposed to fulfill to anybody else in the family and friend circle? And lastly, if you are turning out to be net positive in terms of all your assets minus all your liabilities, including the insurance claims, then how are we going to distribute that assets? So you need to have an overall picture in place how these financial assets that have been left behind by the person who we lost are going to be used judiciously so that family is not suffering and they're benefiting from the legacy of the individual.
Okay. So, Amit, do you think that the first thing that individuals should do, families should do, is sit down really and take stock of expenses, of incomes, and then even consider making drastic changes in their lifestyle? Does it have to boil down to that too?
It completely depends on the situation of the family. If it's a well-to-do family where we have other sources of income, so even if this person was bringing some income, if that person stops coming, then we should be able to run the house. But if he was the only primary breadwinner in the house, then we have to look at what is the current savings balance, or what is the balances of the portfolios and who have the ownership of the portfolio, and what is the impact until we get the ownership of the portfolio, and what is the impact if we are unable to withdraw money from his bank account balance. Completely a function of how many earning members we have in the family, or how many earning members we are losing in the family because of the pandemic. So you have to look at From sources of income point of view, you have to look at from the expense point of view, what is going to be the reduction in the expense having lost this person. We also have to look at from assets point of view, which are the sources of income and generating monthly, quarterly, or annual income for running the house in the required capacity. So holistic evaluation of what do we need, what do we have, and who are the sources to give us what we have, and then what are the sources which are not earning members but are assets who are going to give us what do we need in the given time. So assess overall your requirement and your sources, and then see what the shortfall or the surplus is, and then take your time to put all the loose ends, tie the loose ends, and see if you have a concrete plan coming out of it.
Okay. How should the family members ensure that they are getting the right, ownership, possession of the deceased assets? So, I mean, I think this entire process would obviously get much more easier if the particular person, lays out a proper plan and has also informed all his family members that, look, these are my what I have lying with this particular bank account or this fixed deposit, this demat, so on and so forth. But how should essentially, in the absence of this individual, family members go about taking stock of all of the assets if in case, the deceased has not left behind really a proper, financial handover, if you could call it that?
Yeah, and that's a very sorry state to be in, right? So you have no clue what the family member had, and now I'm in a situation where I don't know how to take care of myself and my other dependents. So tough one, but I think we need to get all the paperwork in place. First of all, we have to search for all the important statements. We have to search for important email accounts, see what we can gather together, whether it is through NSDL statement, through employers' benefits program. So start with obtaining the death certificate. Start with engaging a lawyer immediately so that you can have a succession certificate also in place that court will grant you, so that you have important paper in place. Then start submitting the death certificate in the important places where the individual had the account. This could be bank, this could be a mutual fund distribution center, this could be NPS office, this could be employer's office where the person had the EPF account. This could be even banks where the person had the public provident account or any other small savings scheme. So you will have to start with where all you can submit the death certificate and succession certificate as required. Take a stock of, based on the papers that you have managed to find, take a stock of where all do we have in what sources, and then start step by step recovering money from these sources after doing conversations with them. Because if you were a joint account holder with that person, the process is not going to be as painful. But if you were the nominee and not a joint account holder, then the process is going to take some more time. But if you were neither a nominee nor a joint account holder and there is no will either where you can claim the assets, then you will have to engage a lawyer. You will have to do all the important paperwork in terms of obtaining succession certificate, and then using the Hindu laws, figure out why these assets become your assets, on what grounds. Make sure you have that paper authorized and certified by the court, and then you accordingly take the paper forward one institution at a time and then start claiming your assets. So depending upon the situation of the family, how open the person was in terms of maintaining the account with the family, or how open the family members were to know and learn more about this situation, it can be a pleasant or an unpleasant experience for the family members.
Okay. Now, of course, this is in terms of the asset, but you need an asset that also generates frequent income for you. The salary has stopped, or the business income has stopped. And let's say if the surviving members are not yet in a position to be able to start earning for themselves, how essentially can they go about then getting that frequent income setting in? Do you think that it would probably be a good idea for these individuals to allocate more money in, those assets that generate some sort of a frequent income?
Good question. And I think it's a function of how many earning members we have in the family. If there is no other earning member in the family besides the deceased who's obviously no more, then how do we run the house? So we will have to figure out assets, and assuming that asset ownership situation is clear, then we assess that I, as an important person or head of the family with other dependents here in the family, am I in a position to manage this money professionally with a professional help, or I am absolutely clueless about managing the money? So if you're absolutely clueless about managing the money, you can put your money in a fixed deposit and make sure that these fixed deposits are interest payout options. So on a regular monthly or quarterly basis, you're receiving interest that you need to take care of your living. But if your monthly expense requirement is more than the interest that you are receiving from these fixed income options, then obviously you will have to withdraw money, keep aside money in savings account, and then have maturity of the fixed deposits to the duration where you are using the surplus cash, and once that is eroded, then you get the next maturity proceeds. So you will have to structure the interest payout option if you were to implement a very simple FD option. But let's say you were lucky. Let's say you had a financial planner on board, the person who passed away onboarded a financial planner, and you were on and off part of the process along with that person. So you know who to reach out to, you know who to work with, you know who to talk to and figure out the complexities of investments and other asset ownership. In that situation, work with that person. If you did not have a financial planner, explore signing up somebody who can help you professionally manage your money. Explore becoming an earning member yourself. See if you can take up a job, because you would also need your mind to be distracted towards doing something more constructive, something which is more valuable for the larger cause of the people around you, right? So figure out what is your next stage in life. How do you want to transition into it? How do you want to use your current money so that you can create the kind of life you want to create? And how do you ensure the important goals, the non-negotiable financial goals that you had identified with him or her for your family members are not compromised, and there is some plan of action for them?
Okay. Now, of course, the one thing about the one scheme that many employers, the government as well, offers to the remaining members of the family of the deceased is the security to a certain extent. Mostly it's offered by a lot of employers. In some ways it's offered by the government as well. So I want to know what exactly are there. There is EDLI, EPFO. So how can essentially the family members ensure that they tap all of these available rights as well to them?
Yeah. So the first thing is to get in touch with the employer where the deceased was employed. Get a list of benefits that the deceased was entitled to get in terms of insurances, life insurance, critical illness insurance, personal accident insurance. So get a grip on what insurance benefits the employer had for that person. If the person had left behind a document that enumerates all the benefits to the family, should the person be no more, that's a lovely situation. But if that document is not there, the only way for you is to work with the employer, set up time with their HR team and tell them what the impact of this is and how they can streamline the entire operations. Check the gratuity that the person was entitled to. You have to figure out whether the person could have earned gratuity in case of loss of life. You have to evaluate the total EPF corpus inclusive of the interest which has been left behind as an accumulated amount. You have to evaluate the EPS, the employee pension scheme contribution, and what is the amount that can be totally withdrawn. You have to evaluate the employee insurance plan through the employer benefits program. You must do that. There is sometimes they also take a private insurance, which could be an X factor of your annual salary. It could be 6X, 10X, 5X, 4X. Different companies have different policies for the loss of life. Evaluate and figure out with the HR what this can be done. Unfortunately, you will have to work with the employer. This is not something where you have the information at your fingertips. So you will have to go out of your comfort zone, figure out what are the ways of communicating with the employer during the COVID times, what documentation needs to be done and submitted along with the death certificate, and what is the process of collecting that money back from them. It requires you to work very close with the person identified by the employer organization to work and make it easy for you. And because of the online situation, some of it becomes much easier. It's just a matter of filling it up, scanning and sending the documents. But for anything else that requires physical signature, you will have to carefully, with utmost safety, figure out how to send the paper from your desk to the employer's desk so that it can get processed.
Okay, all right. So I guess this is something that, is all that you'll have to take stock of. And I think it's a good idea to, take the help of a proper financial advisor. He or she will be aware of all your rights, all that you are entitled to, and will help you sort of, get your things straight, from a financial perspective as well. Well, let's do one thing. Let's take on board our questions and queries. Remember, folks, if you have any queries, you can write into us. Our email address is themoneyshow@etnow.tv. Our first question is coming in from Ashish Navlakha. Ashish says, my father passed away without leaving a will behind. He had some mutual funds in his name with a nominee as his brother. What is the process of transferring the mutual funds to my father's legal heir now? This is quite a tricky one because in the mutual fund papers, the nominee is specifically written. So what happens in such a situation then?
So your step one is to speak with your uncle or your father's brother who happened to be the nominee on this paperwork and figure out if there is an easy way. If there is a situation where there's no conflict, obviously you work with your uncle and make sure the nominee papers are submitted with the asset management companies and you are able to make all the redemptions as a nominee and collect the money. And this is what your uncle can do. And in the end, the uncle can hand over the money to you. But if there is any conflict situation, then it would be good to have a proper succession certificate established and engage a lawyer. It is completely dependent on the dynamics in the family. Sometimes situation is not easy as we understand, and sometimes it is super easy because the person was not mature, the dependent child was not mature. So probably the investor put a more responsible person as a nominee so that the child is better taken care of. And he forgot to convert the nominee from his brother to the grown-up child. It could be a good situation in the family also, but sometimes it can be a bad situation. So step one is sitting across the table with the uncle to see if this can be sorted out easily with all the paperwork. If not, then obviously you will have to take the legal route, which might take much longer than what you think. So figure out what your options are, weigh the pros and cons of both the options, and then pick up an approach that is more suitable to you and saves your time.
Okay, this is a little bit tricky, because it's a family matter and, there are all sorts of emotions involved as well. Sometimes it can take a while, but, if you're lucky and, things are smooth, then the whole transfer process should not be difficult. Okay, I think we have time for one more question. It is coming in from Mr. S. Chakraborty. He is a resident of Pune. He says that he and his senior citizen mother were having separate demat accounts with Karvi Stockbroking, and both are nominees to each other's accounts. Now, the paper shares were essentially purchased in their names by their late father, who passed away in 2017. And in March 2019, the demat process was issued by Karvi. And their demat accounts as well were created 1 month later. Now the question is, can he appoint a new DP instead of Karvi and transfer the shares to the same after December 2020 when the situation has improved? I think he's talking about COVID. And his mom, he says, is facing a lot of health problems, so they want to appoint a new DP quickly. And also he's asking you on Bank of Maharashtra, SBI, HDFC Bank, if they are reliable DPs. They hold a bank account as well, by the way, with Bank of Maharashtra and SBI. And he's also asking you your view on Angel Broking Zero Tha. Basically, of course, after the entire catastrophe that is Karvi, he's looking to transfer these shares to another DP. And yeah, there are all sorts of health situations as well, given the fact that his mother is also 79. So how would you recommend Mr. Chakrabarti go about to ensure that, there's clean ownership of these shares?
Yeah, so a lot of questions. Let me take one at a time. First one, there was a news in April that IIFL has taken over Karvi, and that has also allowed the investors to do transactions in their demat accounts. So test it out. So first thing I would suggest is, if your mom's 79, senior citizen, and if you see some health risk, you can start with liquidating your mom's assets, free up that money from those securities and move it into her account, and then also work with her to see how that money can be used. If you are not comfortable liquidating her assets, and if you're not comfortable with Karvi/IIFL securities, then you can open another account with another DP. But make sure that your account ownership status is exactly the copy of what you have at Karvi. And then share the new account details with Karvi or IIFL, and make sure the assets are transferred out from Karvi platform or IIFL platform to your new DP platform. Once that is done, you can do your liquidation, or you can hold on to what you want to maintain as a long-term holdings in your portfolio. So that covers coming out of the problem of Karvi. And also that addresses coming out of the problem that may potentially arise if mom goes unwell, right? So liquidate mom's assets for sure. Now let's talk about what are the other choices for Mr. Chakrabarti. Any of the banks he mentioned, he can go with them, because they are brokers when it comes to providing demat services, and they are all reliable names. So I don't see any issue why any of these banks will have an issue. Work with them, open an account with them as a new DP, and do the transfer or liquidation, whatever you want to do. I have observed that the online processes are far more easy and convenient when it comes to Zerodha or Angel. So try out Zerodha if that works out for you. That will also at least save your trip from going out. That will also make sure that you are able to do all the transactions while you're online from home only. So see what options work for you, but don't hold a firm opinion that Karvi situation is bad. Now it has improved since IIFL has taken over. Explore that idea of liquidation of assets from there, so that you don't have to open another DP account. But if you do need to, then figure out what the options are, look at your choices, and then accordingly take it forward.
All right. Okay. Well, I think on that note, we are out of time. So, Amit, thank you so much for joining us. I think this is a very important and relevant topic. We'll be putting up this show on YouTube as well. So I'm sure our viewers can too gain from the guidance that you've shared on the show. Thanks so much once again for joining in.
Thank you.